Hello everyone, Namaskar to all of you. I hope all of you are fit and fine. Now, in this video, we are going to start economy. In the last video, we have discussed in detail the syllabus as well as the strategy and the relevance of study of economy. Now, we can start with economy in a big way, hoping this fact that through a slogan that well begun is half done. The meaning is that when we start something in a pragmatic way, if the beginning is good, it means 50% work is completed. So having such a mindset, we're just going to start the Indian economy. As far as the economy is concerned, I have seen that the first question that I face in class that what is economy? So before going forward, we must know what is economy. In fact, economy is nothing. Everyone in our day-to-day life is facing so many economic challenges, as well as each and everyone, those who are surviving on this earth, are involved in economic activities, whether is a cobbler, whether is a farmer, each and everyone, those who are living on this earth, they are just involved in certain economic activities. In fact, economy is nothing. Economy is the study of all these activities. Broadly, all these economic activities being conducted by the human being is divided into two segments, that is microeconomic study and macroeconomic study. These terms are very familiar, each and everyone is acquainted with all these issues. As far as the microeconomic study is concerned, when we discuss and talk about individual economic activities, means the demand of individual, the supply of individual, the marketing conducted by the individual are falling under microeconomic study. And when we start talking and when we think about the entire economic activities, that for example economy of any state, economy of any nation, global economy, means on in a broader perspective, when we start a study economy, that is referred to as macroeconomic study. So in this way, these are the differences between macroeconomy, microeconomy and macroeconomy. As far as our competition is concerned, broadly in all the competitive exams, macroeconomic study is the part of our syllabus. As far as the micro is concerned, it helps us to understand the entire economic activities. But whatever the news reflected in the newspaper, whatever the topics we have discussed in the syllabus, whatever the chapters we have decided, whatever the questions are being put up in the examinations, are broadly based upon macroeconomic study. So I mean to say macroeconomy is the main area of our study. So we'll focus largely on macroeconomic study, and the microeconomy will help us to understand economy in a big way. And in this way, with this positive perception, we are going to start the first chapter, and that is financial system. As far as the financial system is concerned, what is this? First question that comes to us. In fact, you all of us are acquainted with the banks, insurance companies, developmental financial companies. A number of financial institutions are functioning in our economic system. Collectively, it is financial system is the set of all these financial institutions and organizations. So in other words, you can say that financial system is the set of financial institutions, financial markets, financial instruments, financial services, and the role of the system is that it helps us in various kind of transactions, and above all, it promotes savings in domestic sectors and make it available to the public and private sectors as per the requirements. Say for example, suppose when we have surplus fund in our hands, we just try to deposit this fund in a bank. Bank, what bank does? Bank uses this fund to extend loan to the other people. Similarly, each and every financial institution are involved in different kind of activities depending on their specific area of activity that will be discussed largely. As far as this financial system chapter is concerned, you may put up the question why we are going to start from this chapter. So the answer is that this chapter is very relevant, quite relevant for our examination, because every year in all the competitive exam, a lot of questions are based on this chapter. In civil services also, I think around 5 to 6 questions are asked every year. Lastly, having finished this chapter, when we discuss the question papers, things will be clear to us. So I mean to say the first relevance of this chapter, study of this chapter, is that every year so many questions are asked. Second relevance is that in every newspaper, irrespective of the language, in daily newspaper, a lot of news are based on these chapters. So this will help us a lot with respect to the understanding economy as well as to get the question in the examination, and that's why we are going to start this system, because today we cannot survive without the strong financial system in the global economy, in the modern economy. Some months back, there was an examination and there was a question, which one of the following system is considered to be the backbone of modern economies? Agriculture sector, industrial sector, services sector, financial sector were given there. Undoubtedly, the answer was the financial system. Why? Because you might have seen that whenever banks are closed for 1 or 2 days for any reason, lakhs of millions of transactions are just get stopped. It's not possible to continue any business. So you can understand how much it's relevant for us, and that's why we are going to start this chapter. This will help us a lot in our study. As far as the structure of the financial system is concerned, the entire system is broadly divided into two parts called money market and capital market. You must know different kind of markets in our day-to-day life, but these markets are different. You cannot get money market, capital market in your city, in any city across the world, because in this particular name no market is available. But these markets are available in the books, in the study, in the question papers, in the newspapers. So once again, the structure of financial system is divided into two parts: money market and capital market, as reflecting in front of you. We'll have to distinguish between them. Money market is the market of short-term transactions. Now we are going to the deeper part of this chapter, and your duty is to hear the things clearly. If you will hear my statement and the lecture clearly, each and everything will be crystal clear to you. Once you have understood the things, this will be beneficial to decide the answer, because so many questions are based on the understanding, how much you understand the economy. If you understand the things, you can deliberately decide the answer, what is the correct answer, without any book, without any other help, without any external help. The money market is the market of short term transactions. You'll have to remember that short term means the transactions conducted for up to 1 year or below 1 year. It means that if the any transactions is being conducted is being conducted in economy, that will be considered as short term transactions. As far as the capital market is concerned, it's a market of long term transactions. Long term means transactions for more than 1 year. So this is the basic difference. When we study in detail, because this chapter is very long and we'll have to make so many videos to clarify. Therefore, when we go into the deeper part of this chapter, things will be more clear to us. But these are the basic difference. If any question to you that what is difference between money market and capital market, answer is quite clear. Money market is the market of short term transactions, and short term means less than 1 year or up to 1 year. Capital market means the market of long-term transactions, which means more than 1 year. Transactions for more than 1 year. Okay, so I think the meaning of money market and capital market is clear to all of you. We can start. In fact, these two markets are two different chapters and quite relevant for the study of economy and to understand economy properly. As far as money market is concerned, we'll just try to consider separately and one by one. In the money market, there are two terms, money and market. So, meaning is that without money, market is nothing. So, I mean to say that before coming to the market and money market, we must have the clear meaning of money. So, if I put up the question to you, what is money? Generally, money is a very common term and people are very acquainted with it. But you must know that even on the site of RBI, the meaning of money has not been mentioned. RBI itself is silent regarding the meaning of money. But we can discuss here. Uh, as far as the traditional study is concerned, in the old books, in the traditional books, it has been mentioned that money is what money does. Money is what money does, which means that money could be defined, money could be expressed through its functions. And as far as the functions of money is concerned, it is in front of you. The main functions of money are, the first one is medium of exchange. Easy to understand. When you go to any shop, we give the money and in turn we take some commodities. This is exchange. But you must know that before that, unknowingly, one function has been already done. Before any kind of transaction, before any kind of exchange, we first ask the price of commodity. Asking the price of commodity is referred to as the measurement of value. Suppose you are going to purchase coffee and you ask what is the price of coffee. If the shopkeeper is saying that it is 100 rupees, so this 100 rupees is referred to as the measurement of value. So measurement of value, medium of exchange, storage of value, these are considered the main functions of money. So if these kind of functions are available in a particular things, that will be referred to as money. Okay. Similarly, simultaneously, there are some quality in money. Functions are different, qualities are different. There might be so many qualities of money because here we are just trying to understand money with our particular perspective of examination. So whatever is important, whatever is relevant for our examination, that would be discussed here, not in a traditional way what is mentioned in all the books, what is required for this examination. Because based on my past 18 years of experiences, I have seen that the last, I think, 15 years papers are just clear to us. So I know clearly that what type of questions are being asked. It's crystal clear to me. So there is no confusion to me. Okay. So we'll just try to understand only those things which are important for our examination, which are completely fit to our trends. Trends mean the pattern of the examination. Okay. As far as the quality of money is concerned, there are two quality, that might be more quality also. Two qualities are quite relevant for us. Liquidity, it's very important for us. Liquidity means cash. You know, when we discuss in detail, there might be some similarity between the qualities of money and liquidity. If I put a question to you, what is the quality of any liquid, you may speak that there is a flow in the liquid, as well as liquid can take any shape at any time. You must know the same things is happening in case of money. Money is flowing one hand to another, everyone knows, it's quite clear. As far as the shape is concerned, when you purchase something, money is converted into that particular commodity. Suppose you purchase t-shirt, it means money will be converted into t-shirt. You purchase pen, money will be converted into pen. So in this way, we can say that this quality of liquid is also involved with the money also. Okay, so money is flowing, and there is a quality of characteristics of adaptability, convertibility. It could be converted into any shape also, and that's why money is liquid. Come on the applied sections. Applied sections means you may get in the daily newspaper news like that there is a shortage of liquidity in the banks. There is a crunch of liquidity with the banks. It means that these kind of they are talking about the shortage of the cash in the banks. So in this way, the term instead of cash, in newspaper writers, your examiner, in the book writer, and the teachers also, rather than speaking cash, they use the term liquidity. When you see the question paper of EC, several times questions have been based using this term. Acceptability. It is another quality of money. Acceptability means suppose you are giving 100 rupees to anyone and the person is saying that I will not take it. I don't believe in this 100 rupees. They will have to believe because the RBI governor is giving the promise. So there must be acceptability. So these are two basic qualities of money. Liquidity is most relevant for our purpose. Apart from that, there are certain types of money also. There are certain types been given here. Legal money or fiat money. You might have heard about that. Legal money means any money issued by RBI or the government of India. That is called legal money. Legal money means behind that money there is a support of there is a legal support. So obviously without any legal support, banks, um, Reserve Bank of India, government cannot issue the money. So simply you can say that any money issued by RBI or Government of India would be considered as legal money. There is another name of legal money is fiat money. Fiat money means which is issued by order of any authority. So that is the meaning of fiat money. So I hope that the meaning of legal money and fiat money is clear to all of you. Credit money issued by banks. What kind of money is issued by banks? Checks, drafts, easy to understand. Suppose you have to pay someone, we have just give the check instead of money. So it depends on the credit of the bank. So these kind of instruments used by the banks are the part of credit money. Checks, there are different type of checks also. Different type of checks like that. You might have heard about the post dated check. Post dated check means that is called PDC in short. Suppose today you are giving check to someone, but the date there is a one after 1 month and 2 months later date you are mentioning there. So that will be PDC, post dated check. Bearer's check, you are just mentioning only the name. Bearer's check means whosoever bears it, bank will pay him. So that is bearer's check. Cross check, also called account pay check. It means that if you are giving anyone a cross check, it means the amount will be transferred only into the account of that person. So that is called cross check. So in this way, different kind of checks are used in the different kind of transactions in our activity, in our economic activities. So these are called credit money. Next one is near money. Near money means any kind of instruments, any kind of securities you can say that could be converted easily into money. And the best example, in fact, the near money, the best example is the bonds. You might have heard about the bonds. Generally, bonds are the instruments of capital market, and bonds are issued by uh, the companies in the capital market to raise long-term funds. So, different kind of securities. Broadly, securities are depending on their nature, depending on their time period also. So some securities are short term securities, some securities are long term securities, bonds are long term securities. Securities means any type of paper, any type of instruments through which transactions are conducted. So that is broadly known as securities. Any kind of instruments on which dates are, means loans are transacted. Raising funds through bonds, it's a kind of loan raised by the company from the public. So when we go in the deeper part of the study of this chapter, things will be more clear to us. So in this way, near money, we'll have to remember in a simple term, close to money, any kind of paper that could be converted at any time into money, that will be that will be known as near money, and bonds are the best example. Apart from the bonds, you might have heard about the national saving certificates issued by the government for a long term period, uh, Kisan Vikas Patras issued by the government, generally sold through the post offices and the banks to raise funds by the government to help the farmers. So these kind of securities are being issued by the governments and private organizations from time to time for raising funds on a particular paper, that is security, is given to the bearers, and it could be any time converted into money. Suppose you are having national saving certificate. Suppose you have surplus fund of 1 lakh rupee and you want to invest somewhere, and you want to, so suppose you decide to purchase national saving certificate. It means that a paper will be given to you and there will be a maturity period. But in between, suppose if you need money, any bank could place it and will extend money to you. So that is the clarification regarding near money. Hard currency and soft currency. Hard currencies, where the demand of the currency is high and supply is low, and the best example is dollar. So with respect to the hard currency, any kind of global currency which is highly in demand always could be considered a high currency. Say for example, dollar could be considered the best example. The dollar means US dollar. Around 70-80% transactions across the world are conducted in terms of US dollar. So the best example of hard currency, always demand is high. Even in our country, suppose you want to purchase $1, you will have to pay around 75 rupees to purchase any to a single dollar. So that's why that is called hard currency. You'll have to remember uh, for your you can say comfort. Hard currency is that currency where the demand is high, supply is less. Si- Similarly, we can understand soft currency. The things will be reversed. So in the case of soft currency, demand will be less and supply will be more. Best example is Indian rupee. So Indian rupee, or the currency of any, you can say, developing countries and the third world countries, will be known as soft currency. Thereafter, cheap money and dear money. Recently there was a question on cheap money, one of the UPSC examination. Cheap money means if the money is available at a lower rate of interest, that is called cheap money. If the money is available at high rate of interest, that will be considered as dear money. You might have seen in your practical life, in your day-to-day life, that sometimes loans are easily available in the market as of nowadays. It's the best example today. If the loans are available at a lower rate of interest and easily available to each and everyone, that particular phenomena is known as the cheap money. And sometimes, and whenever you find that the loans are available at the higher rate of interest, that will be a situation of dear money. Here there are some clue to remember, because I have seen the question here on the hard currency and the soft currency, cheap money and dear money, and I have seen that people get confused. So if there is any question for a clue, you'll have to remember that in case of hard currency and soft currency, demand and supply are the decisive factor. In case of cheap money and dear money, the rate of interest is the decisive factor. Once again, I am repeating to distinguish between hard currency and soft currency. The decisive factor is demand and supply. In case of cheap money and dear money, the decisive factor is rate of interest. Now come on next, that is token currency, and the best example is currency notes, token currency and a standard currency. There are two currency. A standard currency is missing here. but we'll have to remember it. In fact, token currency and standard currencies are discussed simultaneously because there are some differences. In case of a standard currency, it is expressed like that if the intrinsic value and printed value of the currency is same, that is referred to as a standard currency. Once again I am repeating, if the intrinsic value and printed value sometimes also known as uh, face value. So printed value, intrinsic value and face value is equal, that is referred to as a standard currency. And the best example is the coins. Going forward, token currency, it's just reversed. In case of token currency, intrinsic value is less and printed value is high. And the best examples are currency notes. Currency notes means paper notes. Let us discuss in detail both these terms because I have seen the question here, so it's quite relevant for us to discuss in detail. In case of a standard currency, I gave you the example of coins. Everyone knows that each and every coin across the world are made up with the help of certain metals, and that metals also involve certain values, that is the medium of that currency, you can say. So the metal that has been used to make the coin and the value of the metal is called the intrinsic value, and the figure and the digit that has been printed on the uh, coins, that is referred to as printed value or face value. Take the example of 5 rupee coin. The 5 rupee coin, suppose the metal that has been used, the price of the metal is rupees 5 and it has been also printed 5. In such a case, that could be referred to as a standard currency. But in practice, you know that in course of time, the value of metal keep increasing. So suppose today, the metal that has been used to make the 5 rupee coin, the value of that metal is 10 rupees, but even it is printed only 5 rupees. Obviously, people will change their perception and they'll try to accumulate the currencies. And the government intentions to issue currency to meet the transaction, to show short transactions, just will be over. This kind of the objective of the government will be failure. In such a condition, you might have seen that in the past years, government have changed substantially the coins. I don't know how much coins you have seen, but I have seen the coins of the 50 paise, 50 paise, 25 paise, even 20 paise also. Before that, there was 1 paise coin, 3 paise coin, 5 paise coin. But in course of time, all these coins lost their relevance because there was no value. More recently, even the 50 paise coins are not in use because nothing is available on that value. That's why it has been scrapped. Okay. So in this way, this is the clarification regarding standard currency. Now come on the token currency. The best example is currency notes. Currency notes means paper notes. You know, take the example. Take 100 rupees note. Right now, 2000 rupees note, 500 rupees notes. When we see that almost similar paper has been used in all these currency notes, it is up to the RBI to decide the denomination 100 rupees 500 this way. Suppose in future government decide to issue 5000 rupees note, does it mean that it will be 5 times or 10 times of the 5 rupees note in the bigger size? No. Only color will be changed, design will be changed, and they will change the figure. Just you take a very new 2000 currency notes and cut it from the middle and give it to the two people, 1000 you and 1000 you. It's ridiculous because at this currency note will be turned up, there is no relevance. It will be turned into piece of paper. So though we are discussing that in case of token currency, uh, the intrinsic value is less, but in some cases it is zero also. When the currency notes and paper notes are turned up, their value is zero. There is no value. We cannot transact them. Therefore, these are the differences between token currency and standard currency. But there are so many questions and some kind of information here. So I would like to share with you because I've seen the questions in the past years, depending on the token currency and standard currency. If there is any question that what is the kind of Indian coins, you must remember that Indian coins are neither completely token nor completely standard. So what is the answer? The answer is standard cum token currency as given here. A standard cum token currency. So Indian coins are a standard cum token currency because these are neither completely standard nor completely token. Another information here that in 1957 India adopted decimal system of currency. Decimal system of currency means the multiple of 10. Multiple of 10. In 1 rupee there are 100 paise. So in this way it is multiple of 10. That is called decimal system. And in 1957 we just adopted this system. You may put up the question, what was happening before 1957? So before 1957 ANA system was in practice, that was multiple of 4. You might have heard about that. When you ask to any elder people in your family, they will share their experiences with you. ANA means there were 4 ANAs. 25 paise were known as 4 ANA. There were there are 16 ANAs in 1 rupee. So even that rupee was also divided into ANAs. So ANA was the multiple of 4. So before 57 we adopted quadrile system, that is called multiple of 4. Since 1957 Government of India decided to make parity with the international system, that is decimal system, that is multiple of 10. So in this way just the system is going on. Some years back there was an examination and there was a question in that exam, in which particular year the term new was removed from the Indian coins. I am repeating the question. In which year the term new inscripted on Indian coins are removed from the coins? The answer is 1964. You must know that when in 1957 new coins were released by the government, when the system was changed, on the coins the term new was given. New means that is new 10 new paise, 25 new paise, 50 new paise. When this mechanism lost the relevance, government decided to remove the term new. So that was the question. This is the mind of examiner. This will also help you to understand in what way questions are being set up. So in 1964, the term new inscripted on the Indian coins was removed. Okay. Now the next type of money is uh, hot money. The frequency of hot money in our examination is very big. Frequency is last several times. I have seen the question on hot money. You must know that it's not a particular money. It is one of the nature of money. And the best example of the hot money is the investment made by the foreign investors into Indian share market. We'll discuss, in fact, the share market is the part of capital market. So when we discuss the capital market, picture will be more clear to all of you. But as of now, you might have heard, even it is also reflecting in the daily newspaper. So in capital market, that is share market, that is also known as share market. So when the foreign investors invest in Indian share market, that particular money is referred to as hot money. So as far as the nature of this hot money is concerned, it can leave the country at the same speed as it comes in. Once again I am repeating, hard money is that money which is escapist in nature, moves one place to another place, one country to another country according to the more profit, according to the more interest. So that's why it becomes a nature. So wherever this kind of nature is available, that is referred to as hot money. And the best example is the investment made by the foreign investors in Indian share market. You might have heard, you might have studied and might have seen in the newspapers that if the foreign investors, foreign investors invested huge amount in Indian share market. Say for example, suppose the moment they will get this news and they are having the perception that now the Indian share market is no longer beneficial for them, they will prefer to take out money, withdraw their money from Indian share market to invest some other market. So it's a regular phenomena. It is happening across the globe. So wherever this kind of nature is available, these kind of activities are taking place, that is particularly referred to as hot money. So it's not a particular money, it's a nature of money. Next one is plastic money. Plastic money very familiar to all of us. Today everyone is using credit cards, RuPay card, debit cards, and all these cards are referred to as plastic money. Okay, so easy to understand. The last one is virtual currency or cryptocurrency. Virtual currency or cryptocurrency. Virtual currency means we cannot touch it, only you can see. But the most important characteristics of virtual currency is that it could be transacted only through internet. There is no other ways, only through internet. So it is a kind of digital currency. And as of now, the best example of virtual currency is the Bitcoin. All of you are acquainted with the Bitcoin. Bitcoin nowadays in the past years in our country has been very familiar to everyone. But when we discuss in detail regarding Bitcoin, even in 2015-16, I think there was a question on Bitcoin also. But the question was based on the current affairs. The Bitcoin, in fact, it's 100% technology. In fact, the term coin is there. That's why we dragged in our list of the type of money. But in fact, it's not a coin. It's not a coin. We have already defined the meaning of money. The money is used for the transaction, but digital currency, Bitcoin is not involved, is not being used for any kind of transaction. People are just purchasing and selling the Bitcoin, investing their money itself in the Bitcoin to make more money. So nowadays, Bitcoin has become one of the instrument of investment. And recently, I got from sources that its price of one Bitcoin was in lakhs, more than 10 lakhs. So does it mean that it's a coin? No. Nowhere it is just make parity with the meaning of coin. But even after that, the term coin is there. That's why you can say that it is a coin. So in this way, we can just understand the meaning of virtual currency, also known as cryptocurrency. And the best example today is Bitcoin. From time to time, RBI gave the notices and guidelines that people should not try to involve in the transactions of Bitcoin because any problem will be created. RBI will be helpless because there is no rule in our country. There is no law in the country. The biggest challenge with respect to the virtual currency or cryptocurrency is the regulation. How to regulate it? So regulation is the bigger problem. But having seen and having realized the passion of the people and the demand and the interest of the people across the globe regarding the currencies like Bitcoin, the government of many countries are just trying to issue it, even in our country also. So this issue is it's quite relevant, and all of you will be acquainted to it, and will have to follow the news. What kind of development is going with respect to the virtual currency in our country and the global economy. So whenever any progress, any kind of new development will take place, you will have to ready for the question. So you must know that this was all about the different types of money. So in this way, till now we have discussed the meaning of money. We are all talking about the money market. So we got the meaning of money, nature of money, function of money, quality of money. Now we have got the money in our hands. Now we can enter into the money market, and we can try to understand the money market. But before entering into the money market, we must have the basic idea regarding the boss of the money market, and that is Reserve Bank of India. The Reserve Bank of India is an autonomous body, and this is the boss, this is the regulator of money market in our country. All of you will remember that it's the study of Reserve Bank of India is quite relevant, quite important for our examination. Every year there are questions based on Reserve Bank and the different aspects of the Reserve Bank. So we must have the basic ideas and their functions and each and everything what is required for examination. We'll just try to discuss in detail regarding the Reserve Bank of India. We can start with the basic facts. There are so many basic facts here regarding RBI. RBI was established on 1st April 1935, you know, and for this particular purpose, an act was passed that was called RBI Act 1934. So you remember that RBI was established, RBI was created through RBI Act 1934 on 1st April 1935. You must remember as a concept, because I would like to recall you the core concept and current. We are following the same path. The basic as a concept, all of you remember that when any organization or institutions is going to be created by passing a law by the parliament, that is called a statutory body, a statute, because statute means law. So RBI is a autonomous body. Autonomous body means they are free to take the decisions within the ambit of the law, but it was created by an through the parliament by passing act. Okay, so it is a statutory body. But before the establishment, a committee was appointed by the Britishers, and that committee was called Hilton Young Committee. The Mr. Hilton Young was the chairman of that committee, and this is also known as the Royal Commission. And this committee recommended that there must be a RBI-like organization in India, and it was the background, and it paved the way and paved the path of creation of RBI in our country. After independence in 1949 January, RBI was nationalized. Nationalized means it was taken over by the government of India. Nationalization is one of the policy of the government, means before independence British government was the owner. After independence, government of India became the owner of RBI, and that was called nationalization. On all, each and every fact I have seen the question. So these facts should not be skipped by you. It must be remembered to all of you. Okay. So RBI was nationalized in January 1949, and as of now, at present, the well-known name of RBI governor is Mr. Shakti Kanta Das. Here there are some mistakes. Shakti I is here, but you will remember Shakti Kanta Das, former IS, retired IS, well-known name in our country, and he is the 25th governor of RBI. Mr. Shakti Kanta Das, today RBI governor, is the 25th governor of RBI. But as you mentioned the term 25th, the first obvious question to you, who was the first RBI governor? The first RBI governor was Sir Osborne Smith. Sir Osborne Smith, it has been the question also. And the another question that has been asked here, who was the first Indian RBI governor? The well-known name is C.D. Deshmukh. C.D. Deshmukh, that is Mr. Chittaranjan Das Dwarkanath Deshmukh. But you must know, you must remember that with respect to Mr. C.D. Deshmukh, there are three questions here. If there is a question, was the first RBI governor? Answer is C.D. Deshmukh. He joined his office in 1943 and continued mid of, I think, May or June 1949. So there are three questions here. The first question is the first RBI governor. Second question is, who was the RBI governor after independence? Answer is same, that is C.D. Deshmukh. Third question, who was the RBI governor when RBI was nationalized? I already just mentioned that RBI was nationalized in January 49. That January is not mentioned here, but you remember it. January 1949. So, and he continued his office till mid of the 1949. So the answer was C.D. Deshmukh. Means C.D. Deshmukh when was the RBI governor when RBI was nationalized. So these are three questions here. Who was the first RBI governor? First Indian RBI governor? Who was the first Indian RBI governor after independence? And third, who was the governor of RBI when RBI was nationalized? And I didn't mention here the headquarter of RBI, but in one of the state examination I saw that it was the question, where is the headquarters of RBI? You must know that RBI's headquarters are situated in Mumbai. In Mumbai, RBI's headquarters are there. So you'll remember it. Okay. One another question that I've seen several times in the UPSC, twice it has been asked in UPSC. What is the accounting year of RBI? You must know there are three type of years: calendar year, 1st January to 31st December. Second is uh, financial year, 1st April to 30th of March. So I may put up question to you, which financial year is going on? So the answer is 2021. Today 2021 is going on. It was started on 1st April 2020 and this will be ended by the next year 31st March. So that's why you might have seen that always conjugal years are taken when we discuss and talk about the financial year. Okay, so we adopted financial year. It is happening in most of the developed countries of the world also. 1st April to 30th March. As far as the accounting year is concerned, this is the year for which a particular organization maintains their account. Okay, so that is called accounting year. RBI has been the only organization in our country that adopted different accounting year, because majority of the institutions adopt accounting year similar to the financial year. It means the financial Indian financial year is their accounting year. But in case of RBI, it was deferred. That's why it became a question. Okay. So till 2020, it's an important question. All of you will be ready for that. This will be a coming question in the examination because it's a big change. Since independence till 2020, July to June was considered as the accounting year of RBI, and that's why it became question twice in APSC. And as well as it was also the agriculture year in India. July to June means 1st July to 30th of June was considered as the agriculture year in India. But this year I saw that it was a news recently last month that now government has decided to change, government or RBI you can say had decided to change the accounting year, and RBI is now going to adopt the financial year as accounting year. You must remember, RBI is going to change their accounting year from July to June to April to March. So from the next year, after the completion of the running financial year, RBI will adopt the financial year as their accounting year. So you'll have to remember, it's a big change. It's a big change after RBI, after independence with respect to RBI. Okay, and but still July to June will be considered as agriculture year in our country. You may put up the question, why there is a change? Answer is quite clear that when RBI was started, there was no computer. RBI is the boss of all the financial institutions, especially of the banks. So once the account of bank was completed by the end of the March, by the 31st of the March, then data were available to the RBI to make their own account. So that's why there was a gap. To complete the account of RBI. Today, every data is available on a real-time basis. So it is updated on the real-time basis. So immediately data are available from the banks to RBI. So there is no need to separate it. So it is convenient for both, and that's why RBI decided to adopt financial year the as their accounting year. But one more information here I would like to share with you. Some years back, around 2015-16, government appointed a committee, that is Acharya committee, to consider all these issues, or in fact to consider the change of the financial year in the country. And that committee suggested that the government of India should adopt calendar year as the financial year. But it was not in operation. It was not accepted till now. Could be possible in future, but there is no clarification from the government side. So we'll have to watch for that. But even today, the traditional financial year, that is April to March, it is in practice. Okay. Uh, but one state of our country, that is Madhya Pradesh, they decided to adopt calendar year as the financial year. So you remember that Madhya Pradesh has adopted uh, financial year, uh, financial year. They adopted the calendar year as their financial year. So that is the only state, and that's why it might be a question, and you must remember it. But the most important development at this particular juncture is the change of accounting year by RBI. So once again, I am repeating that RBI has changed its accounting year, and now from the next year, after completion of the running financial year, RBI will adopt the financial year, that is April to March, as their accounting year. So it's a big change. Okay. So in this video, just we have just spent 1 hour. So I will just try to uh, cover it here, and thereafter in the next video we'll start discussing the functions of RBI. As far as the functions of RBI is concerned, it is one of the most important area of our examination. When you see the last 10 to 15 year question paper, several questions have been based on the functions of RBI. The different type of questions have been asked in your examination, in all the examination, not only in UPSC, but especially we'll focus in UPSC. That is the you can say the most prestigious and the largest examination in our country. So if you are able to cover the syllabus of RBI and you are just touching the level of UPSC, you will be comfortable. You will comfortably answer any question of any examination. So I think nothing is beyond the UPSC syllabus. Nothing is beyond the strategy of UPSC. Nothing is beyond the ambit of UPSC. So we'll give focus more and more only on the UPSC. Okay. So in the next video, we'll just discuss in detail in a very easy manner the functions of RBI, and that is most relevant and that is most important for our examination. Thanks to all of you. Thanks.